Great. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining. As I mentioned, this is our third quarter MMA educational seminar on the topic of event planning and sponsorship. We're really excited to have you here alongside our lovely esteemed panelists for this exciting topic. As questions arise, just a reminder, drop them in the chat and we will address them at the end of the meeting. So without further ado, we have our lovely 5 panelists here. We have Katie from Boatyard, Jenna from Freedom Boat Club, Carla from Marine Max, John from Eventful, and Alex from Mercury Marine. And Katie is going to kick us off this morning.
Thank you, other Katie, for the lovely introduction. My name is Katie Fairman. I am a board member of the Marine Marketers of America, and I'm also the networking chair, which means that I get to plan all of our events. In my daytime job, I work for Boatyard. It's a marine service software, and I've been in the industry since 2012 and planned all kinds of events from boat shows to B2B trade shows. So I'm really excited to be here today and share with you guys a little bit about building your event story. All right. So an event story is the experience that you want to give to your guests or attendees when you're having your special event. A lot of times when I've been at different organizations, they hear of an event that might be in their market and say, oh, let's go and see how we do. And you get, your name on a backdrop and on a pop-up banner, and you show up with a table and you kind of see what happens. And I think that, that's good when you want to just experience whether or not that place is where you're meant to be. But a lot of the time you want to get way more specific than that. You want to go there with a specific value proposition or a message, like a brand new product launch or a core value prop of your product, that you want to make sure that anyone that interacts with you at that event is going to get that message home. So you don't want to go just as your overall broad brand, because then you're relying on people who are going to come up to you and hope that they, need what you're selling. Versus if you are talking about something of value, that can appeal to a much broader range of people who are going to be at your event. So once you've decided what your motivation is for being there, what your core message is, then you want to look at what your goal is for the event. So a lot of the time people will say, I want my goal to be, 50 people to sign up for this networking lunch, or we want to have 200 people come by our booth at the boat show. And those goals are great. They are important to make sure that you're getting the attendance that you need and you're reaching the audience that you have. But those sort of event-based KPIs are not going to drive the success that you need down the line. So you really want to look at your company KPIs or core things that are happening in your business and figure out what is the goal that you can control and you can drive that will get to the right end result. So for example, if your goal is boat sales, you might know that for every 20 people that fill out a financing application, 5 of them or 10 of them are going to end up buying the boat. So maybe that's something that you can have in your control, is how can we get people to hear about our financing options while they're on site, because that will end up in more sales down the road. So then you want to think about what your hook is. What that, core objective is that you want to get, and what you want those people to understand. How are you going to use something that is really compelling to get those people to come to your event? So if you guys haven't heard of the book Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion, I really recommend that. I did it on Audible. And it goes over, I think, the 7 core principles of influencing people. And you can choose one of those and try to pick something that is going to be really attractive to your audience. So my favorite one to pick is exclusivity, because that always motivates people to get in early, come get something that's limited. They also call it scarcity in this book. So you want to think of something like that that's exciting and it's relevant, and it doesn't always have to be at the actual event. So for example, I don't know if we have people that go to Dealer Week on this call. Dealer Week is in Orlando. So maybe there's something that you could do that's at Disney World, or another attraction that's around the event. So you don't always have to be in the confines of your booth space. Use the place where you are, or the surroundings of the event to draw people in and offer them something that they're not going to be able to get anywhere else. The biggest thing about event planning that I think people may not realize when they first start is that your success at the event is going to be dependent on everything you do before the event and everything you do after. So just like how we talked about, if your goal at the event is to get people to look at your financing options and fill out a financing application, you want to follow up with those people afterward and make sure that they are, closing and that the boats are being sold. You want to be emailing them months ahead of time, all with this core messaging. And it's that work that you do before and after the event, they're going to make that event a success. So if you look over here on the right, these are just some examples of how you can build an event story rather than just going to an event as your brand. So for the B2B space, so you're going to a trade show like Dealer Week, and you're a marketing agency, and you really want to highlight why people need video in their marketing strategy. That is a great one. I think it's something that's very difficult for people to do on a regular and consistent basis. A lot of the time they need to outsource it, and they're looking for a solution, and video always is going to be engaging. So let's say you want to focus on video strategy as your core messaging there, and you want to bring in 10 new customers that are going to use you for, video content generation. One thing that we did in the past that worked really well is we started a marketing campaign 4 months before the event, saying for the first 50 people that registered, we are going to do a live professional video shoot of them talking about their dealership on camera. And then when they left, they got a little USB port where their professional video shoot was there. They could take it with them. And it also drove a lot of people to the booth because they saw the lights and the cameras, and they're like, what's going on over there? So that was an offering that was limited. It was exciting. It had good visual appeal on the event. And then we sort of carried a Hollywood theme for our design and for the messaging that went out all the way before and after the event. So that way people are really getting an experience when they came there, and they relate that positive feeling of the experience with your brand. Same thing if you're looking at a B2C show. It's obviously a little different. You're going to have a much broader group of people. And say you're talking about a new model launch. We already talked about other creative ways rather than, boat sales to measure the success of your event and drive success down the road. Maybe you want to think of something that would be a hook that you could offer your hottest prospects that would be something that they would feel really special. Like if they came in before the show, they could go on a ride with this new model with the designer of the boat, if you have that relationship, and that's something truly that they would remember and want to brag to their friends about. And you could do a really cool pre-launch campaign with little 15-second interview clips with the boat designer, and maybe not even say what that person's talking about. Use it to really tease the information out and get people excited. So you can use a grid like this to try to design the story that is around your event. And then when you go to your marketing plan, you're looking at email, social, landing pages. You want this story that you've built to just carry through in all of those pieces before and after the event. So now you've had, for the same amount of work that it takes you just to go as your brand or as your company, now you've got a real story that people are going to leave the event knowing about you and having positive feelings about you. Could you go on to the next slide, please? So one thing that I would really recommend is having an X factor, and it does not have to be directly related to your grid. So for example, I put a couple things over here. One year I went with a group and we all wore these bright orange skirts. You can't really tell in the picture, but they were very, very bright orange. Or I've been with another team that all wore red Converses. So it's something, we all are like, oh, matching uniforms, but I hate to say it, but it really works. You could also do something like, a sushi bar, or, one company that I worked with, they are a technology company and they got a robot dog, and people were just coming all over the place to see this robot dog. It had nothing to do with their company. It had nothing to do with the offering at the show, but it was that really big buzz factor that just got people talking and got people looking for you At our booth last year, we did a popcorn machine, and the smell was filling the whole room, and it was torturous, but everyone would come look for us to try to find that thing. So there's a lot of companies that do this really well. I don't know who started the rumor about the Bennington pontoon party, but I was desperate to get into it. I don't even know why. And I got there, and it was kind of dark in there. And I was just like, this is the greatest thing. I don't even know why, but I love this and I want to be here. So what you want to do is try to get that buzz factor going, pick something really fun, and get people talking about it. So in addition to those things, I just wanted to add a couple other tips that have really helped me in event planning throughout the years. One of them is to knock out the logistics early. Whether you are planning your event, in my experience, 3 weeks ahead of time or 10 months ahead of time, you're always going to have very similar catering options. You're going to have very similar, furniture options, the logistics, the things with your vendors. They want to get it out the way early before it gets busy. You do the same. It really doesn't take too much time, especially if you have recommended vendors or ones you've worked with before, to just go ahead and say, okay, I need catering for these days. I need electricity for these days. Booking those things you can really knock out in a day and spend more of your effort on the marketing that's happening around the event, because that's where you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck. Do not sit around and agonize about the appetizers. I always just let them pick. Like, they know what's good. Let them do it. Maybe there's someone else in your team that really wants to help and they're a foodie. They can do that sort of thing. But those details you can really get lost in, or get, too many opinions coming in. So those things are the first things you want to do. Just knock them out. And then when they're done, they're done. I also recommend you have an OSC, which stands for an OSNAP coordinator. That is someone on your team who is just there that day to do nothing but be available for whatever comes up that you aren't anticipating. It could be running to FedEx to make copies. It could be finding a stapler. I feel like Katie Freeman had to do that for me at a MMA event. It could be manning the desk, or if you have, you've lost an HDMI cord and they need to go to Best Buy. There's always going to be that little thing, and just knowing you have someone that knows they have to do nothing but be there for you in an emergency, it really helps, and it takes a lot of the load off, when those things do come up. And then the other thing I would say is to be very excited and really take how serious you feel about this event and spread it out to the group. Make sure you are communicating really clearly, getting all of your people together for more meetings than you think you need to make sure they know where they're going to be. I do schedules for my whole team where they're supposed to be at every hour of every day. I do make them wear matching outfits, even though they hate it. I try to be really overboard with how much I plan and how I communicate to them, because the more effort and passion I put behind the event, your team really will feel that as well, and they'll give it their best. So I put a picture of Bill Pullman on Independence Day, because I always like to make an opening speech to the team, and I feel like it really does help. So if you are in event planning, that event is your time to shine. And you are the ruler of the show. So just be confident and have fun, and that will really trickle down through your team and help you have better results. And so without further ado, next I will introduce Jenna. She is going to talk about some real nitty-gritty tips about how to get events planned. Take it away.
Thanks, Katie. Oh gosh, what a great start to this. And everyone, I'm Jenna Smith. I am the global event manager for Freedom Boat Club, as well as some of the other brands within our business acceleration division at Brunswick. I have been in the events game for more than 3 decades and have seen a variety of crazy times and really successful programs with brands like Brunswick, like Freedom Boat Club, but also Harley Davidson, Summerfest, Pepsi Cola, and Hasbro. So a lot of experience to bring to you today. One of the things I want to share, though, is give yourself a pat on the back right off the bat. An events planning individual, anyone who is in experiential event marketing overall, it takes a special personality and a special skill set. You already have what it takes by staying patient, kind, organized. And so all of these things that we're talking about today should help lean into what you already have to be successful. We're just getting you a little bit further down the line. I'm going to be talking to you today about B2B events. And thanks so much, Katie, for getting me on the slide about the top 10 tips that I'm going to share with you as leveraged for Freedom Forum. Freedom Forum is our annual Freedom Boat Club Global Franchise Conference. We have several hundred franchise owners and staff coming to us from all places around the globe and joining us in Cape Coral, Florida. So here to kick us off, number one, you've already heard Katie talk about it. Set goals for your event. This is probably the number one most important thing you need to do because it will guide all of your planning. But take that a step further and document your entire event. That means have a production tracker, have a run of show, have an emergency plan. And, really the more that you plan out now, that will give you the time to take care of some of the things that will be kind of those surprise elements. And so bringing us to the second tip, plan for the worst, hope for the best. That means that you've got to consider every single contingency. I would specifically ask you to detail in your budget what you're going to spend, what your anticipated spend is, and then keep track of your actual spend as you spend it and include a contingency because notoriously the budget is the one thing that is going to spin out of control and you want to maintain that as much as you possibly can. But think of all contingencies. As an example, I think it was last year, David Folks, our Brunswick CEO, had to come down from Chicago on a plane. We had a snowstorm. He couldn't make it. The night before, we were doing a quick video of his presentation, be able to show in his time slot. Also, we've dealt with a hurricane. You can see the wonderful view of the property with that great dock coming off of one side into the water. The hurricane in October took that dock away completely. We had to replace it with a temporary dock to be able to do our sea trials. It's those kinds of things that you want to be able to address and make the best decisions on the fly. Having a budget that is up to date will allow you to spend what you need. Moving further, on number 3, know what your audience wants. This can come with a pre-event survey or a post-event survey, which allows you to plan forward to the future events. For us at Freedom Forum, we know that the 2 top factors are networking and education. So we spend a lot of time building our agenda for those 2 categories specifically. And that includes, particularly with the networking side of it, balancing work with fun. We provide networking opportunities with some great hospitality in the evening. I've included some of the posters there that showcase the kind of themes that we have. It allows people to have fun, but also we try to come up with additional ways for people to gather in different groups. So as an example, if you came with your Freedom Boat Club team, we would encourage you to join other people. So perhaps encourage owners to sit at a certain tables, operations people to sit at certain tables, marketing people and salespeople to sit at their individual tables. So you have an opportunity to get to know additional people in different ways. Maybe it's geographic, a domestic group of tables, an international group of tables. Keep that in mind and push people to meet new folks as they're going by. Number 5, choose a great venue. The Westin has been fantastic for us. So if you are a seasoned event planner and you are looking for a venue and need water immediately adjacent to the venue, the Westin Marina is a phenomenal property in Cape Coral. I'd highly recommend it. But not only is the venue itself fantastic, but the people and employees that are working at that venue, the general manager, housekeeping staff, security, catering staff, all of those people work in tandem and have been phenomenal for us. Number 6, minimize talking heads and leverage that internal and external audience. So you can imagine what it's like. Remember your college days when you walked into a lecture, you sat down, you heard the professor speak, and it was really a one-way communication. We want to make sure that people, again, have the opportunity to interact. And so that means balancing that talking head, that lecture direct, with workshops, breakout sessions. And these really come into play for another important reason. Usually in a group of several hundred people like we have at Freedom Forum, there are different levels of experience within the group. So you have brand new, fresh employees who have just joined the organization and are looking for the basics, block and tackle simple tips. But you also have seasoned and veteran employees who are looking for much more advanced and experienced tips and tricks to leverage. And to break those groups out into those specific audiences gives those individuals the time to see or get that, that specific kind of input. Also, external audiences, leveraging those external audiences. You can see a picture of me with Jim Knight. He was the training lead for Hard Rock Cafe. We had him as our keynote speaker, and it was wonderful to be able to get some fresh perspectives and new ideas that came out of experiential excellence, customer service within that fast casual industry that we could apply into ours. Number 7, capture success. Quotes, videos, photos. At all times, you want to be able to capture these things, not only to be able to share with your attendees, but also to use as proof against the set goals that you have, so that you can, at the end of the day, define that success in specifics as to how you made or reach those goals. I would recommend having a photographer the entire time, but if you can't, choose a specific time where it's instrumental, that that people are able to interact with that video, talk about the great time that they're having, and maybe even provide some of that input on camera as to how you would improve or adjust in the future. Number 8, this one is difficult for some, but it's important. Be honest about your weaknesses. When you're really assessing what worked well and what didn't, you have to be honest with yourselves about what needed to be improved and how much it needed to be improved. Document that too, so that people don't have that same pitfall. And again, being honest really protects your events in the future. Number 9, let everyone have a voice. That means that not only you as an event organizer, but also please get feedback from the venue, get feedback from the attendees, get feedback from your leadership team, as well as the staff who were with you along the entire way to plan and execute. It's all of that cumulative perspective that's going to give you the best review and the most truth behind what actually occurred at all times. And finally, recognize, reward, and retain. We've talked about retaining those records, making sure that you have those as a lasting after action review. But please recognize the individuals who gave a little bit extra and reward them with either a shout out, a small gift, or something like that. It will pay dividends to get those individuals back on board to help you, whether helping and being part of event planning is part of their core competency, or they're just a key member of your team who are playing a very, very important role, but going the extra mile to be able to deliver the success that you've defined. So those are the top 10 tips that I have for B2B. At this point, we're going to turn to B2C, and Carla, please take it away.
Thank you, Jenna, and good day, everyone. My name is Carla Milan, and I have the honor of being the National Events Partnership Manager here at MarineMax. I'm highly focused on Azimuth yachts, Galleon yachts, Aquila power catamarans, and Ocean Alexander rendezvous, as well as partnerships. And today we'll be talking about these amazing events that are offered throughout the country at our MarineMax locations, as we do offer a variety of classes from boating safety courses to fishing tips, maintenance classes, women on water, kids in boating, and our great getaways, so much more, right? Our courses are designed to help our customers, their families, and friends to feel more comfortable and confident out on the water, empowering them with the knowledge and giving them that extra boost of support, all while connecting them with other like-minded boaters and showing them how to get the most of their boating experience. So here we go on that slide. We have our Bahamas or week-long getaways and our best practices that we use. So how does the program work? Well, each event is planned at the store level and will vary based on demand and overall marketing plans. So you'll begin by designing your trip. That includes the dates. What time of year are you planning on hosting your on-water event? Your routes, how are you going to get there? The marinas where you'll be staying, all the social activities, and everything you could think of that you will need to be organized in order for your event to successfully take place and that your customers are going to be enjoying. Your event fee, are you going to even charge for the event? And partnering with your local vendors to enhance your event. So what are these main functions of your extended getaways? Well, they typically will always have a registration, a welcome cocktail reception, a breakfast or brunch, a group day activity, one major dinner, and luxury gift bag status. So if we go to the next slide, we will see the duties on MarineMax getaways. And we always follow our 5 Ps, which are proper planning prevents poor performance. So we all want to make sure that we plan accordingly and make sure that we have our slip reservations where we're going to be staying. Update your events calendar and post it online. You want to make sure that you're assigning your trip leaders that are going to help make this trip that much more successful. And of course, register your customers for the trips. And plan the course, right? Both inside and outside of the intercoastal, depending on what route and where your destination will be. You want to make sure to factor in weather and bridge closings, because that's not always predictable, and have a backup plan. This means charting and developing the GPS numbers with your captain and knowing where you can pull in for emergency repairs or refueling purposes. But you're always going to want to be ready and forward thinking. And then that brings us to our itinerary. You want to create the individual event itinerary. What makes this event so special? And how are you going to continue to keep engaging your customers? And your itinerary will contain the schedule, a list of contacts at each resort, the rates quoted, and other pertinent information about the event. And your captain's meeting. Whew, that's a very important one. You always want to conduct a captain's meeting prior to your trip being scheduled and for departure, right? So at this meeting, you're going to review the itinerary, the information on the ports of call, your customs, if you're going out of the country, any fees, and all related activities and services that will be given to each attendee. Additionally, the lead captain will go over a list of special equipment customers may want to have, such as charts, stern anchors, a dinghy, GPS coordinates, spare parts, and all that good stuff. Communicate. You cannot communicate enough. You want to communicate with your customers before the captain's meeting, at the meeting, while underway, face-to-face, dockside during the event, and of course, after the event. And you also want to make sure that you have a group and individual profile. What do I mean by that? You want to be able to get to know the customers who are going on this trip and their level of experience, who their sales team member are you familiar with the type of vessel that they have that they're going to plan on taking, the fuel capacity and the consumption, because this could determine extra fuel stops and just helping them with any service related or troubleshooting areas that you may need to help guide them on. And of course, spare parts that they're carrying. Always want to make sure to be thinking ahead and having our plan Bs all the way to Zs, contingencies. And your boat. What boat are you going to take as a lead boat to go on this getaway? You want to make sure to go over that with your service team and make sure that you'll all dialed in that department. And safety, of course, having the proper Coast Guard safety package on board, along with all the paperwork and your phone numbers needed. And if we could go to the next slide, we'll talk about the fun provisions here. Is your boat provisioned with your food and beverage, your sheets, your towels, all that basic equipment and items that you'll need as well? And you want to be checking in daily with your store. They should have your float plan and always want to be keeping tabs with, oh, where are they at now? And during the social functions, while you're conducting your event, you want to get acquainted and make sure that you're reconfirming with your vendors, with your dock masters, with your resort contacts, everything that you have planned for your event to make sure that is seamless. And if there are any pop-up items that, oh, we need a table on the dock because we're going to do a yacht christening, poof, you have all that dialed in. And of course, weather. During the trip, you want to keep an eye on the weather. The captain is responsible for making the final decisions to delay or continue the trip always, but want to be mindful with the weather, of course. And speaking of backup plans, you want to have a breakdown plan. Have a plan in case someone does break down, and choose a backup leader to lead the group in the event that you need to render aid to a disabled vessel. And that goes along with your service team. Oh, stellar service team that just turn those frowns upside down and make the magic happen. So you want to determine what service technician will be attending your trip to help troubleshoot throughout your journey. And of course, activities. Sometimes there'll be some moments that you may need to line up group activities or guide your customers to go sightseeing by boat, especially if they're first-time boaters. So you always want to be the leader. And of course, we have our wrap-up report that at the end of the getaways, you'll report back with your team and obtain all that pertinent information, such as, you know, the resorts, the boats, the yachts, all that good information, so that you could continue to elevate and improve that experience for the next time. And that goes along with your surveys that are sent out post-event, because it's important to gather that feedback and suggestions for your future events. But all in all, it's important to remember the goal of your event and to create a fun event that engages your customers. You promote it as needed. You keep your customers and attendees engaged throughout, and encouraging camaraderie, because that's always fun. And have fun. Have fun. So without further ado, I will tee it off to Mr. John Fuse with Eventful, who's going to be going over some fun topics. So thank you all.
Thanks, Carla. I'm John Fuse with Eventful. We are a corporate and nonprofit event management company in the Mid-Atlantic region. But that doesn't hold us from diving into some other areas. We help folks with everything from conferences to expos, galas, as well as inaugurations, both gubernatorial and presidential. Being in the Mid-Atlantic, it's convenient. So for the vendors and exhibitors, what does your event look like? Is it a conference where you're going to have people sitting down? Is it more of an expo where you're going to be showcasing boats and other accessories to the business? Or is it a combination of the two? So being able to provide your folks, and especially the exhibitors, with the easiest method to be able to register and get signed up is the most important part, because you want them to fill up all your booth spaces as much as possible, because that makes the end user, the customer who's coming and possibly purchasing from your event, want to come back the next year. So with that, a few things to know. What's included with the booth? Is there, what are the sizes of that booth that you will have? Does it have tables, chairs, linens? Is there marketing included with that? Some of the things that can also be done are you can tease some sponsorships and other marketing tied in with this, of promoting them prior to the event, during the event, signage throughout the event. So having that as an option for them to know is important as well. Additionally, having the ability to purchase other services. So if they need something from an exhibit company, the expo or trade show company, who is that going to be? Who do they need to contact? And how do they contact them? So providing that early is extremely helpful for them. Sometimes if you are leaning on the conference side of things and it's someone who's going to be presenting, having that connection where they can touch base with whoever that production company is, whether it's on site or a third party, to be able to make their presentation as smooth and easy as possible for them, having that number. In addition, if there's tables and chairs and other equipment that you need, who is that person that you will call on? So having all your vendors in line in case someone asks you is always key. Let's see. Moving on. Oh, I just lost one thing. Give me 2 seconds. I'm going to pull something up on my end. So with that, the next kind of element would be vendor registration forms. Understanding who it is that's coming, who's going to present for you. The organization name is obviously key, but secondly, who's the point of contact? And is that the point of contact on site during the event itself? What their booth size is. Make it easy for them to pick and choose what booth size they need. And that could be a little different if you have slips. Obviously, there's difference in slip sizes. So what does that look like for them? Is there an electricity need? A lot of times that electricity need is coordinated through a third party to be able to provide that for them. So having that up front is needed. Vehicle size and requirements, depending on the venue you're at, will really depend on what regulations they have. If you're inside and you have a vehicle with a motor and an engine in it that drives in, typically, and even trailers, they'll want you to have something under tires. If it is a motorized vehicle, they'll want you to have something under the oil pan. Sometimes there's limitations on the amount of fuel that's in the engine itself, and then where keys end up having to be left during the event so that nobody can start the vehicle. Knowing those are huge leading up to the event and being able to touch base with your vendors. And I always say follow up, follow up, follow up. The more times that you can get in front of those people exhibiting, the more likely they are to potentially purchase a sponsorship. They see they're being, cared for and cultivated and taken care of. So the more times you touch base, and it doesn't have to be a phone call, it can be an email, it can be a phone call another time, making sure they're good, they have all their ducks in a row, is where the follow-up becomes key. Moving on to the other side of it is kind of leading into picking your venue. We heard a lot, set goals before you get to the event. Knowing what your event is going to be and what your event's going to entail will allow you to look at the different venues and determine what's going to be the best fit for you. So if you need water, obviously you have to find a marina or a venue that's going to be able to host that on the water, or that element of your show on the water. And then if it's going to be more conference style, does a exhibit hall work, or does a hotel work for you? Understanding that and being able to have resources. Hotels are great if you have a lot of folks who travel in. How do you use all those elements together to be able to negotiate the most beneficial price for you to be at that venue itself? Some of the kind of big areas of doing that would be when you are looking at the cost of a venue. A lot of times, if there's going to be food and beverage incorporated with the event itself, you can negotiate that room rental rate tied in with your food and beverage consumption. So what does that mean? basically all it does is you go back and say, hey, we will meet a minimum food and beverage price and your cost there. We don't want to pay for the room rentals. And a lot of venues will offset their room rental with the cost of food and beverage. So keep that in the back pocket. A lot of times they'll send you a price and then come back to you and give you that as an option. If you say, hey, what if we looked at negotiating it this way? As well as when you're looking at it, what do they have on site? Do they have AV? Do they have tables and chairs on site? All that will also cut down on your cost when you look at the total event itself. AV is a big one. A lot of places have it on site and a in-house provider, but there's a lot of service fees tied to that if you brought someone in, you would be able to eliminate. That may be something, even a buyout fee that they charge will end up being about the same as what some of those service fees are going to be. But if you're getting better quality and service from an outside vendor, it may end up being a bigger savings in the end. And then two other little things, multi-year agreements, especially now, people are wanting to lock in those dates early. So if you can spread it over a multi-year agreement with folks, they typically lock you in at this year's rate over the next 2 or 3 years, which the way things are going and trending, that would be a huge savings with inflation. And if your date's flexible, see what their calendars are as well and how that would work. So with that, that'll wrap that for now. I'd love to turn it over to Alex and let her dive a little more into sponsorships.
Thanks, John. Hi, everyone. My name is Alex Kipperman. I'm the Director of Marketing for Mercury Marine, Mercury Racing, and Quicksilver Products. Really excited to be here today to talk to you about just some best practices that I've had as I'm evaluating event sponsorships over the course of my career. So first up, really knowing the goal of your sponsorship and what it needs to fulfill is the core to your evaluation process. We heard this through some of our other speakers and what they've talked about. So understanding your audience is number one. Is this a core audience that your brand is going after? Is it a growth audience that you've identified? If there isn't that alignment with your audience and who that sponsorship is, this is your time to walk away from that sponsorship and keep searching and evaluating. If it's a new or first time boater, if it's a retention play, it just also allows you to craft what you're looking for your sponsorship needs and who you're going after. What is that message you're communicating and how you show up across your sponsorship and event practices. The second one is, what are your goals? So understanding your KPIs will, of course, allow for a successful event. So if it's a brand building focus, if it's lead generation and you're wanting to get, number of demos, so butts and boats is a big part of this. If you're looking for signups of items, if you're looking to show up something new and different, understanding what those core goals that you're looking to achieve to get at that audience that you're trying to go after is incredibly important, and you need to remain true to those throughout the process. And then lastly on here is ensuring that you're having an integrated approach. So when we're going to market with various sponsorships, this isn't just logos anymore. We need to make sure that we're looking at sponsorships from a 360-degree lens. So how are you showing up with your sponsorships across your paid, owned, and earned channels? So when you're at your actual event presence and your experiential aspect to it, how are you supporting that in your paid channels? How are you going to market with your PR, your third-party partners, your social, your email, your website, ensuring that you're having that holistic experience? How are you supporting before, during, and after? So we call this the tease, the launch, and the sustain aspect. So ensuring that you're getting the longevity of your sponsorship is important. And then also as customizing those sponsorships that best fits your brand. That's not one size fits all. So then going on to the next slide, I always like to do this with some real world examples that I've personally been a part of. So I came from Harley Davidson, as I worked with Jenna in a past life as well. So one of the sponsorships that we worked on was X Games. And there was a core piece to this that we evolved from 2016 to 2019, where we were only at this event for a flat track racing approach, and it was very focused on racing. And there was a strategic initiative that we were relooking at our corporate goals, and we had a goal to achieve 2 million new riders over the course of 10 years. And we saw X Games as the opportunity to relook at the sponsorship and really go after new riders, because they are, the X Games enthusiasts is that thrill seeker audience. So what we did is we reevaluated the sponsorship, brought a new sport to the Winter X Games. So we had an ongoing presence throughout the year, added paid media aspect to it. So we were the first brand to infuse 6-second commercials in an ESPN television broadcast, did influencer integration content pieces throughout the year, social, email, lead generation campaigns, and then of course event activation. So we took something that was only focused at Summer X Games for 1 weekend in the year and really expanded it to be a holistic, evergreen, year-long campaign. And then something that we're currently doing today with Mercury Racing. We've had a number of events that we have been a part of for many years. One of them is Florida Powerboat Club. They're our biggest market. And what we've done with them in the past is had an event presence at a lot of their poker runs. In working with them, we've identified, right, they are great at community relationships and fostering that advocacy. So we are in the process of pivoting how we show up and how they support us to ensure that we're talking to those boaters and retaining those boaters as a part of the brand, and really crafting those sponsorship packages around that. So the last slide that I have before I toss you back over to Katie for Q&A are those final tips to get the most from your event sponsorships. So again, tying back to my first slide, have that consumer and goal in mind throughout your process. Don't deviate from it. I know there's going to be a lot of noise that comes in throughout the process, and some cool ideas that maybe might not be on brand or fulfill those goals. So ensuring that you always have that consumer and your goal in mind throughout the process. Number 2 is getting creative. So ask again for those unique experiences that set your brand apart. If you don't ask for it, then you won't get it. And oftentimes it can inspire more creativity and, the what if scenarios. And of course, the people, other individuals can start to spin off of that idea as well. Number 3 is not everything needs to be a cash exchange. So, historically sponsorships have always been cash in exchange for, showing up, but you can also think of an exchange for product, in-kind exchanges, channel support. So if your channel has a very large following in social, and that sponsorship that you're a part of, they want to also gain their following, you can do an in-kind exchange in that space as well. So again, not everything needs to be cash. Oftentimes they are, but you can also think new and different and beyond that. And then lastly is building that positive relationship with event organizers and production staff. It makes the event a whole lot smoother. It makes the experience a lot easier. And oftentimes organizers will go above and beyond for you and give you more than what your contract has in it. So, it never hurts to ask, and it never hurts to continue to build that positive relationship for that longevity, and also retaining those relationships as people move on to other companies as well. So with that said, I'll turn it back over to Katie.
Thanks, guys. What a wonderful presentation today. Thank you all so much for your expertise and insight. We certainly appreciate it. So I'm going to jump over to the chat and see what questions we had come in, and we'll get those answered. Let's see. Oh, interesting little AI pop up there. One question that I have while we wait for others to pop in is, and anyone's welcome to answer, any of the panelists, if you were to give one piece of advice to someone planning a big event, what would it be? What one takeaway should we all consider?
Well, if my colleagues don't mind, Katie, I'll take that one.
Sure.
So, you've already heard it, but I think I would say communicate more than you probably think that you should, and get people in early and keep communicating all the way through. Typical of an event, something is going to change. You need to continue to communicate with all those audiences so people are showing up with the same intent, same plan, same perspective as they would the change from the original, to make sure that everyone is in lockstep. We talked about, again, the hurricane coming in, the dock going away. All of a sudden we had a temporary dock. people had to understand that that temporary dock had a different layout than what we had originally anticipated, which meant all of our sponsors had different slots and different spaces. It was just a single walkway as opposed to more than one. Understanding and keeping that perspective going is critical to success. So surprises, and it's important to know, surprises don't make people happy on either side, the planning side or the attending side. So again, the more you communicate, I think that would be number one across the board.
Great answer, Jenna. Thank you. Would anyone else like to comment, our panelists?
I could add one. One thing, it's not, hopefully you won't need it, but one thing I really have learned is to either ship yourself a box or bring it with you of just sort of stuff like scissors, tape, power cords, HDMI cords, anything that you could need, extra name tags, extra polos, just kind of like the supplies that you would have at home or at an office. Make sure you bring that with you because you'll need something like that. And you always like end up running around saying like, who has a Sharpie, or things like that. So I would definitely send a supply box, and then also make sure you know where the closest, FedEx or print center is. A lot of the time events have one nearby, but know where that is, know how to email them your stuff. There's always going to be things you need to print last minute. So it's just kind of that little administrative side. No matter how well you plan the event, or for disasters, you can't help if you don't have a pair of scissors. So
yeah, Katie, I'll jump in on that. I have to tell you, I love this. And typically at an event, we'll put together a war room, which will be the central location for all of that kind of stuff. Everything from Band-Aids to bug spray to, I saw zip ties in the chat. Ideal, yes. Extra name tags, all of that stuff. So everyone knows if there's a need, go to one location, we'll take care of you.
exactly.
I always bring fishing line to an event. I know that sounds silly, but you can tie anything up and it's not visible, right? So that's always a good one to have in your event box. Yeah,
That's a really good one.
We always have the event box that rolls out also. That's what we call it, and has everything, including a wine bottle opener, just in case you need it. But the other thing too, and it kind of ties with communication, is what's your event team's communication plan? Is it cell phone? Do you have a group chat? Do you have radios? Whatever that is, knowing what that is before you get there is huge. The other thing would be timing. Being able to have your timing schedule done early to be able to plan some of these, knowing that you're going to have some changes, that will give you that time to make an adjustment as early as possible.
that's a great addition. One other question we got in the chat, any special tips for spreading awareness of an event happening?
I can start on that one if you guys don't mind. Yeah, so some things that we've done on our side, as I mentioned in my section, is there's the tease, launch, and sustain part. You need to ensure that you are teasing to start. In my experience, I've always done 2 to 4 weeks in advance. You don't want to be too far out because you don't want people to be forgetting about the event, but you want to get far enough out where people can put on their calendars and it's top of mind. So 2 to 4 weeks is where we start teasing. Of course, getting it across your channels. Where's your website destination? Are you emailing individuals, whether it needs to be a geo-targeted approach or a national push? Ensuring that if you have influencers or other partners that are in this sponsorship, for example, are they pushing out in their channels as well? So you need to make sure that you're again looking at that holistic channel view, and that even within your channels, for example, social, you need to hit people up via posts, reels, stories, because consumers look at those different channels in different ways, and some people only look in reels, and some people only look maybe once or twice a week. So you need to ensure that you're hitting different channels at multiple different times, and then that launch moment, ensuring that you have that impactful piece, and then finally sustain. How is that event even going out afterwards? So, but the tease piece I know is directly related to this question.
Great answer. Thanks, Alex. Oh, Vicky, you have a hand raised. Go ahead. Might not be able to, let me see. Table mic, there you go. Try that. Might have to drop it in the chat. Here's one from Allie. Any advice on staying within and creating budgets for events?
Yeah, I'll jump in on that one. This is so important. You heard me talk about it on my slide, and I can't reiterate enough that pre-planning budgets when you're walking into an event is critical. In pretty much every major event that I've planned, we've had a cap on how much we can spend. And I would encourage you to put a contingency in your budget that gives you some flexibility while still staying under that cap. I would line item every single item that you can imagine and put an estimate in your budget as a first go. And if there's anyone in an aligned group, so for example, every once in a while, I'll call Alex and say, hey, I'm doing X. Do you have a vendor or an example of how much it costs you? Here are my parameters. Do you think that this is online? Get some of that feedback from some of your peers. Even if you can't get a firm quote, you should have some framework of reality of whether that's going to be realistic or not. And then update that budget with every single spend and every change, as well as putting in a comments column why it changed so you can follow up. And then finally, I know for large events that I've done, I usually meet with our finance team at usually about every 3 or 4 weeks, sometimes even in shorter intervals as we get closer to the event. So we can track invoices that are coming in and going out. One final comment that's kind of a budget adjacent. If you are looking at any revenue streams that are coming in, that would be apparel sales, sponsorship. Give yourself, it's great to have stretch goals, but make sure that if you are counting on that revenue to offset some of your spend, that you're being realistic about what you could possibly take in. It is always better to be able to say, hey, we brought in a little bit more than expected, rather than try to talk through or explain why you've run short.
I'll add to that, Jenna, and thank you so much for answering. That was great. I manage a lot of very small local events that have a very small budget. And so oftentimes in those scenarios, right, you are down to the dollar, if not the 25-cent mark, right? So what I always like to do is when I'm line iteming my budget is note either mentally or on the document what really is important and what's not, right? So if you know as an event planner, I really want this swag, or I really want this level of food, and it comes in over or under budget, is that really necessary and going to make or break the event? There's going to be some areas that may and some areas that won't. So just note that in your own tracking to say, okay, I really don't need this, even though I really want it. And just keep that in mind as you need to ebb and flow your budget. Okay, let's see. Follow up and nurture approach just as important. Yep, great comments in the chat here. All right. Well, I don't see any additional questions, so we've got 2 minutes to spare. We will call it a day. Again, thank you all for joining. We certainly appreciate it. You can find the link to this webinar over the next couple of days on the MMA website in the webinar library landing page. And we will also email out a link to the recording to everyone that attended. So thank you so much. We'll see you at our next webinar or at the Fort Lauderdale Boat Show. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you.
Thank you all.